So I did wait a few hours to record this and kind of let it all settle in. Unfortunately, I'm home alone this week and on puppy duty, so I did have other things to attend to. But I let it all sit with me, unfortunately. The humiliation for Barcelona tonight at the Camp Nou, quite frustrating, and does leave a sour taste in your mouth. Of course, there is almost nothing positive to take from this individual game, and I think a lot of what I'll be talking about on the podcast tomorrow, and even in the match review tonight, is trying to figure out what is real and what is actually an issue and what can kind of just be thrown away with these 90 minutes. Because certainly I don't think this project of rolling that big boulder up the hill has completely fallen back down. We're not at the bottom of the hill, but certainly there's a roadblock. And I don't want to take the analogy too much farther, but this is certainly something that you don't really learn from. I don't know what the lessons are here. You've been knocked back, and you're just going to have to get back on the horse and keep on going. Now that we've mixed enough analogies together, let's try to do this. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 4-0 loss to Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey. One is total collapse. As I said, it's going to be a theme throughout this match review and on the podcast tomorrow. Is that what can we talk about the embarrassment of one night, and then how can we understand how that serves as a referendum for Xavi's whole tenure, for where the team is in their project, and what that means for next year. Because individually, just talking about not even 90 minutes, but the last 45 minutes that Barcelona played, including, well, say 48 if you add the end of the first half and that goal that was scored, it was an absolute total collapse. It is one thing when Xavi's team gets hard done by and gets knocked down in the Champions League because not only they're missing a few players, but because of VAR, when you could point to other things. Or when you're playing against Bayern Munich and you're just simply not good enough, when the other team is way better than you are. I think there's this idea we get to the end of this match and say Real Madrid are just so much better than Barcelona. Then why did Real Madrid lose 4 straight El Clásicos against Barcelona up to this point? Were Barcelona just a fraud in all 4 of those and Real Madrid let them win those games? I don't think so. I think these two teams, as the internal rivals that they are just as good as they are normally. Barcelona had their injuries, so we'll talk about later. But what was frustrating about this match was not the way that Real Madrid scored their goals or outclassed Barcelona when it came to the scoreline, but it's that at home, at the Camp Nou, you do not let your fiercest rival do this to you. Between the ears, it cannot happen. And that's what's humiliating about those 45 minutes. When I hear names like Ferenc Puskás and Alfredo Di Stefano and teams of Real Madrid from the 50s and 60s, I know there's that little thing about my blood running cold. I know my history, and I know that those are names I never want to hear spoken at the Camp Nou because it means that some very bad record has probably just been broken. And that was the case tonight. Because in those games, in those days, what was happening to Barcelona off the field was a disgrace, and what was happening on the field was a disgrace. And that's what tonight was. It was a disgrace in a footballing sense at the Camp Nou. And it is frustrating, because I still believe in Xavi. I think they could win all of the 11 games in the Liga that are left on the schedule, and I still do believe in Xavi. But unfortunately today, we're obviously going to be very critical of that game, because he lost his team in the locker room at halftime. They didn't keep their head, and there were too many issues on the field that seemed to bleed over and allow Real Madrid to find their way and to take advantage of them mentally. 2 is excuses if you want them. We'll talk about it more in the podcast again tomorrow. But why, in the big picture sense, I don't go crazy about this performance, because yes, Barcelona are going to miss out on the Copa del Rey, so no domestic treble. But the Liga absolutely needs to happen. We'll talk about that if they don't get it, and I'll have a much bigger or worse reaction then. But this match and losing the Copa del Rey, the trophy that Barca has more than anybody else, and Real Madrid, by the way, desperate for any trophy. Who knows if they'll win the Champions League that they always do, but if they don't win that one, the Copa del Rey might be the only consolation. So let's put on our Osasuna jerseys and we'll figure that out in the beginning of May. But either way, for Barcelona, in the bigger sense, I'm not going crazy because they were missing Christensen. There was no Frankie de Jong, there was no Pedri, and there was no Dembélé. If you take 4 starters out of Real Madrid's starting 11, they will struggle in the very same fashion that Barcelona did. And there were moments in that game when you do replace Sergio Roberto with Pedri, and you replace Marcos Alonso, especially we'll get to him, with Andres Christensen. Even those two, and Barcelona probably win that game. You switch out Rafinha for Dembélé, and again, Barcelona probably win that game. And whether it's Kessie, I thought he played pretty well, actually, all things considered. But still, you upgrade that position with Frankie de Jong. And again, I think Barcelona win that game. And outside of that, I think the referee once again let El Clásico get the better of him. We've seen this. That if you allow Barcelona and Real Madrid to kind of make it a mud fight and take advantage of each other and take advantage of the referee, they will make every inch an absolute mile. And unfortunately today, the referee in Martinez Monero, he's the central figure in this game. It was 21 fouls called against Barcelona and only 8 against Madrid. Certainly there were questions about a penalty for Alaba's handball. I mean, whether it was a penalty or not, I actually probably would have agreed either way with that decision, because there are people who are paid much more than me to make those decisions. So there are points, especially with VAR, we just kind of have to trust that they know the rules better than I do, and that's probably true. But even then, there was a Lewandowski penalty that probably could have been called, but wasn't. And Militao, somehow he doesn't get a yellow. Vinny Jr. somehow gets out of yellows, and it was frustrating on the day when Barcelona was punished in the way that they were, and yet it seemed like Real Madrid were just getting those little inches. And every time, as I said, if you give Real Madrid an inch, they're going to take a mile, and they kept doing it over and over again. Because that referee did not jump on both teams very quickly early on and say, none of it, I've had enough of it for everybody. I don't know what that was going to take, probably a red card for a Barcelona player, but I'm not saying the referee was in the pocket of Real Madrid. I'm saying that he refereed a poor game. He did not have control over El Clásico in the way that even, dare I say it, Mateo Lahoz, there are a difference between the El Clásicos in which he commanded and the El Clásicos for which he didn't. And there's a big difference between those two, and you can remember both of those different games. Today was not a good game for Manuera. 3 is Xavi's team lost their head with the smallest assist from the referee, sure, but you can't blame the referee for the fact that not only did Xavi lose his team at halftime, but Barcelona players have to be better. You cannot lose your head in the way that they did. Mentally, there were times that, especially in that second half, when that fourth goal was scored, you rolled your eyes because they gave up in a way that we have not seen, I don't think, at all under Xavi. If somebody in the comments below, let me know if there was another game where you saw Barcelona just kind of hang their heads the way that they did and completely throw their hands up and give up under Xavi. I can't think of one. But what I will empathize with is that the way Real Madrid played, and I guess you could say tactically that Real Madrid let Barcelona play right into their hands, but it was frustrating for Barca because in that first 45 minutes, while they didn't have complete command or control of that game, I thought they were on their front foot, and I thought they had their chances, they didn't convert them, and they got immediately punished. Courtois was just good enough to make sure that Barcelona were put to the sword, because if you look at that goal, the first one that was scored in the game that kind of turned it all on its head, there was great build-up and a closest chance for Barcelona at that point. Courtois on Lewandowski with the save, and then a 3 versus 2 in transition. Koundé was so close to keeping it out, so close. Vinny Jr. and Benzema combined to make it happen, and Vinny Jr. gets credit for the goal. Alonso on the counter, a bit out of position, more on him in a second. Then Vinny Jr. finally getting Araujo with a dribble at the start of the second half, kind of being this harbinger for danger to come, because then the second Real Madrid goal coming soon after that. Eder Militao making sure that Lewandowski can't be an outlet. Modric getting between the lines with Roberto on his back. Roberto doesn't want to get the red because he already picked up a yellow. Then Koundé slips perfectly from Benzema to find the spot. First time when Benzema got the better of Koundé in the last 4 Clásicos, by the way, so I don't want to hear that much Koundé slander. And then Araujo's missed shot, and immediately then the other way makes it 3-0 for Real Madrid after the PK. Off a Barca throw-in, it came. Valverde got it off Balde. Real Madrid kept up the pressure. Then Kessie fouled Vinny Jr. for the PK, finished by Benzema. So that meant Ansu on for Kessie, Eric Garcia on for Alonso, and Ferran Torres for Rafinha a few minutes later. Did those subs come too late? We'll talk about that tomorrow. And then the 4-0 with the Benzema hat-trick. Barcelona at that point rightfully deserved to be booed. And, it was kind of frustrating to see, again, the team give up in the way they did. It seemed like 2-0, there was fight, there was an opportunity to come back. Once 3-0 happened, it was over, but 4-0 is all about pride. 4 is if you don't take your chances. Unfortunately, with football, a narrative must be written after a game is done. Because if Barcelona do take any of their chances in this game, we're having an entirely different conversation, very much like Barca would still be in the Champions League if they took their chances. But they didn't, and they're out of the competition. The shots on target, total shots, possession, all of those basic stats say that this match was pretty even. And even if you had just watched the first 45 minutes, you'd be right. Because for those that said Madrid played better in the first half, I don't agree with that sentiment at all, especially for the first 30 minutes. But the last 15, even before the goal was created, that is what started that narrative. I also don't think it was a wrong game plan from Xavi either. Him and Ancelotti kind of toe for toe with this midfield 4. It worked in the past, and it looked to potentially work again. Because remember, this midfield 4 is kind of a buildup of a 3-2-5. And if you're Barcelona, you saw that Ancelotti puts in Rodrigo to the starting lineup, because he wants to try to exploit those 1v1 situations and get behind Balde and get an Alonso on that left side. But on the other side, if you're Barcelona, as they were on the front foot, and I thought Balde was also a net positive and good in this game. Yeah, he pushed the ball out in front of him a bit too far at times, but he also had some game-breaking and game-opening dribbles that certainly could have ended in some kind of final product that, well, again, Barcelona didn't take their chances. But again, I thought Xavi's ideas were good because they held that being Real Madrid back in their own half, got Balde high and wide, and that meant that if you can pin Rodrigo back, then he can't attack. So Real Madrid's whole idea does not work if you are on the front foot. But then when you allowed Real Madrid, through Kroos, through Modric, to find the game, and once Real Madrid had sustained pressure, that is where the worries came. Because there is a difference between the 1-0 win at the Santiago Bernabeu in the first leg, when Real Madrid had all that possession because our counter-attacking side didn't know what to do with it, with today, which is they did have some kind of pressure, but that pressure allowed them to find the game. And the goals didn't come when Kroos and Modric found the game. It's that Real Madrid kind of showed up and allowed themselves the opportunity to get on their front foot in the way that they wanted to. So I think Barcelona, again, they gave too much to Real Madrid. They gave them too much credit in this instance. And people will argue that Barcelona shouldn't have gone out for it and gone for it. But I don't think there are days when Alonso, had his good days, and that was the first leg. But we can see in these big games that counting on him twice in a row probably isn't the best idea. Yes, he can go out and have success against other La Liga teams, but once the competition is raised just a bit, then Alonso gets caught out of sorts. So I would have preferred, if Barcelona had scored in the first 10 minutes and then tried to score again before halftime and put this game away. I wouldn't want to cower. It's not about the Barca way. It's just about at home, you want to take that initiative. Because if Barcelona had sat and defended at the Camp Nou, I think they crumble even earlier in this matchup. And headline 5 finally is what's next. Because after this match, who's the referendum's going to be for? For Xavi, for a number of players, for the board, and with all the financial limitations, where does Barcelona go from here? And it's frustrating because I keep finding myself in this cyclical argument. Well, it's two different arguments. Imagine like two halves of a pie, and I keep jumping to the other side, and I keep finding myself in the same loop over and over and over again. That we know that Barca couldn't afford to build their depth over the offseason after years of bad choices in his management. Rafinha was really poor this game. But I still can't say that due to the goals and assists he's gotten in moments he's got them, Barcelona aren't winning the Liga without him and not signing this season. But if Messi were to come, this match is the reminder that it would be all over for Rafinha at Barcelona. He would have to be sold for as much as the club can get him for and leave that right wing. If all these players, including Lewandowski and Koundé that were bought over the summer, who both really struggled in this game, if they were mistakes to be signed, then who won the Liga this season? If Barcelona's expected goals tells us that the 9 goals in the Liga is fraudulent and those defenders don't deserve as much credit as they're being given, then who won the Liga? It sounds like the pessimistic argument being made is that La Liga stinks, including Real Madrid 12 points worth, and all the other 19 teams lost it instead of Barcelona winning it. We're caught between these two minds, and two things can exist. Barcelona struggle to raise their level to better competition. So seeing a Champions League trophy in the far distance and being frustrated about how far along this project is, that is totally fair. But to undermine the success in the Spanish Super Cup, in the Liga, in the work that Barcelona has done, game in and game out, by saying, well, Spain stinks now and the Liga just isn't good enough, I think, again, that's a pessimistic and bad faith argument out of frustration for the result and humiliation that you see today. Because we can be honest about what we saw being an absolute disgrace. In the same breath, what I do agree with is that matches like this, because you want to get closer and closer to that Champions League trophy, this match could lead to decisions in the offseason if things are financially possible, which, again, you listen to the podcast for those long financial conversations that we have. Barca's issues for 4 seasons now is that they just aren't good enough and do not have the depth to win against the best of the best. Barca's fans expect to challenge the best of the best. A Liga does kind of prove that you're good enough to consistently trash the 75% of a Liga, which is great. But that next step up is the problem. And just from this game, you can say that is true. Roberto, definitely good enough to play against Elche. But immediately, when he's inserted against Real Madrid, he actually usually does play well against Real Madrid. But in this game, he did not. And he was not up to the task against Real Madrid starters. And even back to the Rafinha example. The Rafinha against La Liga sides has been clinical and significant and important. And we compliment for his work in the Liga for helping Barcelona capture that trophy. But it seems like every big game against every big opponent, Rafinha runs out of ideas and does not fit in the long run Xavi's game plan. He only does 85% of what Xavi needs from his right winger. That is why when Dembélé is missing or not starting on the right wing, it does feel like something is missing from this Barcelona team. And this frustration extends even up to the number 9 in Lewandowski. He and his goals won Barcelona La Liga this season, certainly. Ter Stegen, obviously, Araujo. I've already given out the awards and applause in the past. But for Lewandowski, if this is the guy in big matches, not against the Liga sides, but if this is the guy in those big matches that help you win Champions League or could potentially help you win some kind of treble in the far future, well, then Lewandowski, if this is who he is for the next 3 years, Barcelona in a world of hurt. And that signing is going to look worse and worse with each passing year and each passing match even. The problem is certainly that this squad still, because of the financial ruin they are in, it is not an excuse because it's the reality that the club is in. The financial ruin that they are in means that they have not been able to enforce and reinforce this team the way that they would like to be able to compete in all competitions. Because 4 injuries, and yes, 4 of 11 starters is certainly going to derail, I think, any team. It doesn't matter if you're depth. Man City, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, it doesn't matter. If certain teams lose certain players, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. And for Barcelona, you could see in this match who was significant. I mean, Araujo, Koundé, Ter Stegen, Lewandowski, you can say that Barcelona should have had enough, but all over the field, they were missing at least somebody in all these important positions that they needed for this match. I don't know if Barcelona will have the financial might to go out in the offseason and to reinforce the squad in positive ways. Because again, it's really concerning that Alonso and Roberto are already part of those renewals. It tells you, I think, where Barcelona is. And if Xavi is saying that those are the players I want to help to take me to the top of the mountain, yeah, well then we do have to question Xavi's sanity just a little bit. So we will have a podcast out tomorrow where I have plenty of notes that I didn't even get into, plenty of complaints, a few compliments that I wasn't ready to give out in this initial match review, but again, look out for the podcast tomorrow with that. And as always, until next time, and I do mean it, whether it's 4-0 or 5-0 over Real Madrid, or even losing 4-0 to Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey, losing another trophy, all that frustration, all the disappointment, still, always, Forza Barca.